Hi everybody and welcome to Wednesday Night Live with Flowing Faith tonight. I hope everybody's staying warm on these chilly winter nights. So Flowing Faith is going to be the last of our self-belief characters, and she's the last one in the self-belief stage. So we'll be moving on after tonight. Here is Flowing Faith. It's hard to see in that light. There you go. And her flower is the daisy, and daisy means simplifying, and essentially that's what being in flow is, because I think people have a misconception around what being in flow is. So being in flow, sometimes when you think of flow, you think of a raging river, and you think that flow is a bit out of control. So if you think about a raft going down a rapid or something like that, that's totally out of control, hitting up against rocks and being tossed around, that's not what flow is. So flow is a much gentler stream that I want you to picture, but I also want you to picture that you're in control of that, so that let's say you're on a kayak and you're actually totally in control as you go down this gentle stream, paddling along. You're going with the flow of the current and it's helping you, but you still have to paddle. And the analogy that's the analogy I like to give, because it's still, you still have to work and you still have to do things, and being in flow isn't just sitting on a lilo coasting down the little rapids. It's about paddling down the rapids, so using the momentum of the water, but also it's about still working and doing that. So the two extremes of flow are, it's not about being totally out of control and being thrown against the rocks and being at the mercy of the water, but it's also not lying on your lilo, soaking in the sun while you let the water do all the work. It's the in-between of you being on the kayak, paddling, working with the flow of the water. So I really like to use that analogy because I'm a really visual person, and it really helps me explain and understand what flow means. So when you're not in flow, in a logical sense, what it feels like is what I like to call pushing shit up a hill. And it's hard work, and it feels hard, and it feels heavy, and it feels stressful. You have a lot of stress when you're not in flow. It feels like hard work. It feels like doors are shutting all around you. So maybe an opportunity comes up and for whatever reason it doesn't come off. So you keep moving forward and another one does, and then that door shuts. All these things are not in flow, and you feel really out of control. You feel like you've handed over whatever it is that you're trying to achieve to somebody else, and they're kind of dictating the way that you go. So all these things are what it feels like not to be in flow, and that's what I like to term pushing shit up a hill. And then what I like to do is go, well, if I'm not in flow, how can I step back in flow? So if all those things are happening, so if you're stressed, if you at the moment are doing something and you feel like opportunities are coming but doors are closing in your face, if you feel like things are just really hard at the moment, then I would like to suggest that you're not in flow. So what you want to do is step back in flow, and bring in your flowing faith so that you can go more with the flow. So what that looks like is things feel lighter and they feel easier. Doesn't mean it's not hard work, but it just feels easier, and it feels lighter, and it feels doable, and there are little signs along the way that things are moving forward, that things are on the right track, and that things are, opportunities are multiplying and things like that. So that's the complete opposites of the not being in flow, where you've got all your doors shutting and it's stressful, and being in flow where it's really light and it's easy to make decisions. And we talked about this with Intuitive Ingrid, and we also talked about this with Trusting Tracy and a few others. So it's a really familiar concept. But what we're trying to do with Flowing Faith is choose things that light us up, choose decisions that bring us joy, and feel right. So using all those other characters help Flowing Faith, and they help you to make your decisions, and especially Intuitive Ingrid, which we talked about in this self-belief stage, is really tuning into your gut and what feels lighter. And we use that head-heart technique, and that's really important when you're choosing flows, to use that head and heart technique to help yourself make decisions. When you're not in flow, it also helps to know that, or to have a thought that there is a higher purpose around why something's not working. So rather than getting angry at it, it's easier just to step out of it and step back into flow and just kind of leave it there. Whereas if you stay not in flow and you start questioning it and you're really wondering why it's happening, there could be higher purpose, higher reasons, which we kind of talked about in Spiritual Sally, that the universe and our higher selves are these all-knowing things that we don't know. So for example, let's say you had a business deal coming up with a certain person, and you really thought this person was going to be great, and they were going to be good for your business, or they were going to be a great client, or they were going to be somebody that you would work with, or something like that. And you think all the signs are aligned and this is going to be really, really good. Then for whatever reason they either pull out, or something happens that they don't become a client, or whatever it is, something happens. And for me, that's the door shutting in your face. So something, it was all flowing and you thought it was great, the door slams in your face and that opportunity doesn't come off. That person isn't there, doesn't show up, whatever it is. When you trust in the process and the higher values of the universe and things, this is when you start to see later on, and this is also a bit of your resilient Ramona, and can you see how they're all starting to tie in together, is that when you move forward, you may look back and see something about that person that you couldn't see at the time. Maybe there's a personality trait that you don't like maybe some time later they post something on Facebook that is totally against your values, and you think, thank God that opportunity didn't come up, because I wouldn't have wanted to work with that person anyway. So sometimes when you're not in flow, it happens for a reason, and that reason is to direct you back on flow. So the whole thing about Flowing Faith is to really be aware. So how I like to describe it is, you live in your life and you do your day-to-day things, but at the same time you kind of bring yourself out of your life a little bit and observe what's happening. So you analyze it. So when I talked about being really angry about the carpet renovations, I was in it, but I also got to the point where I could step out and look at how I was behaving. So I became the observer as well as the person in it. And that's really important, especially with flow. So if you're out of flow, you step out of it and observe, well, clearly I'm now out of flow. This, and this has happened, and I'm not feeling great, so I'm clearly out of flow, and I need to step back into flow. So to do that is all about your journaling. It's all about making decisions based on what feels lighter. It's as simple as that. So acknowledging that you are out of flow and having that awareness, that observation that you're out of flow, and then basically just drawing a line in the sand and saying, okay, from tomorrow, I'm going to discontinue those paths, and I'm going to investigate new paths, and I'm going to see what feels light and intuitively have a look at it and see what feels fun and light and joyful, and then I'll follow that path and see where that takes me. And then if that turns into something else and turns into something else and turns into something else, then you know you're in flow. When I decided to write this book, and I don't know if I've told you this story, so forgive me if I have, but I'm going to tell it again. So I've had this message that I wanted to share ever since I went through my own change journey. Excuse me. Hey Kylie, nice to be here live. I've had this message and it's been building up and I really wanted to share it, and so what I would normally do is run a workshop, and I wrote a workshop with a few of the techniques and things that I've been putting in the book, and I ran it for a few friends of mine and it was a complete disaster. I thought it was a disaster. They didn't think it was too bad, but I thought it was a disaster. It just didn't feel right, and it wasn't great. From there I went to an online program. So I ran it January to March last year, and I had probably 20 people in that group. It was way too much information. I only had 20 characters then, and it was just way too much overwhelm, too much information. They just couldn't digest it, because what I was wanting somebody to do is basically absorb everything in the change journey. So in one program, which is not ever going to work. So what I did was I was sitting talking to a girlfriend, and I was talking about how I have this dilemma around how am I going to deliver this content? Like, I've got all this amazing content, and I knew that I had 20 characters, and I knew there were more coming. I just wasn't sure how I was going to deliver the content. So she said, why don't you write a book? And I went, well, I can't write a book. I'm not going to write a book. I'm not an author. I don't know the first thing about writing a book. So this is March 2020, just before we go into lockdown. Finished the online program and wondering what to do next. So, and I guess this is me, this is my example of going from out of flow, workshop, didn't work, online program, didn't work, doors shut, okay, I need to step back into flow. What decisions feel light? Whilst writing a book didn't feel light, because it was a lot of work and it felt like this huge project that I was going to undertake, I basically said, okay, universe, if you want me to write a book, I'll write it. But if it doesn't flow, I'm going to stop. So if at any point this feels like doors closing, like mental blocks, you watch all those movies where they have these authors who just sit there and they have writer's block and they can't write and all. I was like, I'm not going through any of that. I'm not interested in any of that. I just want to get my message out to people in an easy to consume form. So I started writing and it flowed. I just, every time I went walking, I got more and more inspiration. My next 20 characters came in. I knew I wanted 44. They all fitted in. They were all over the place. So then I realized I had to put them into categories, and so I did that. And then I wanted to draw them, and I found that beautiful artist. Then I had just pictures of flowers, and then I was like, no, the flowers need to be drawn. So and this is how things would happen. So I'd be like, I want the flowers to be drawn. I went back to my character artist and I said, can you draw me flowers? She said, no, I don't do flowers, I just do people. I was on a Facebook group and somebody said, have you seen XYZ's work? She does these beautiful calendars of flowers. And it was the artist that I chose. And I looked at her stuff and I went, oh, that's perfect. And I contacted her and I said, this is what I want. This is what can you do this? Can you create me 44 flowers that correspond with these characters? And she did. That is being in the flow. So being in the flow is when you go, I've got this issue or problem or something, and then some solutions come up to it. And they come up in ways that you wouldn't have even imagined, like a post on Facebook that you didn't think about, or in a group that you wouldn't even expect somebody to be talking about that, and it comes up. That's how the book flowed. Literally from me deciding to write my book to the end of it was 9 months. So it completely flowed. When I was getting to publishing, I wasn't sure how to do it. I had a conversation with someone. They said, go here, learn self-publishing. I was like, okay, that feels right. I'm going to do that. When I was looking for my editor, she felt right. I went with that. I had quite a few options of editors. This lady felt right. She was in my right price bracket. I went with her. She was perfect. When I went for my cover designer, I went local, somebody I could sit with. It worked perfectly. Same with the printer, the whole bit. Like, it just flowed. That doesn't mean to say it was an easy project. I put in a lot of hours. I wrote all the time. I used to have inspiration at 3 o'clock in the morning and get up. But it felt manageable. At no time did I think, this is too hard, I can't do this. So I went from running a workshop, which felt terrible, to running an online program, which just felt total overwhelm and it was hard and I didn't feel like running it, to writing a book where I realised that the content was going to be manageable because people could pick a section and read that section and work on that section and then put the book down and then pick it up again whenever they wanted to and read the next section. And that's the feedback I've been getting about the book, is people say, this is a handbook for life. So a lot of my purchasers have bought a copy for themselves, which they then thought they would give to other people and pass it on. And they're coming back and buying more copies for somebody else and somebody else, because they then said, actually, I'm not passing this book on. This is my handbook for the rest of my life, and I'm going to keep referring to it, which is exactly what it was, because it's a change journey over life it keeps evolving. And you would move through all the different stages, and you can come back and you're going to have different characters at different times, and that's why the book was perfect. So the fact that it flowed was so easy. So easy in terms of it kept me motivated to keep working on it and doing the hard work, if that makes sense. So if you imagine that my book writing was me paddling down a stream in a kayak, then I'm still doing the paddling, but I'm using the momentum of the river to get my book out. So I just really wanted to share that tonight, because that was really my example of flow. Whereas I've talked about other businesses that I've had where just opportunity after opportunity didn't come off. But then the hindsight thing comes in and you realise that, well, that opportunity didn't come off because that person was this or that, or I can see now why. So there's a lot of trusting Tracy, intuitive Ingrid, resilient Ramona in flow, and it all comes in. And I guess the overarching thing is having this awareness, this observation piece that you can actually say to yourself, because flow is very subconscious. It's not something that's really obvious, so you really have to pull yourself out and have that observation piece that says, am I in flow or am I not in flow? And so that's all I invite you to do this week, is if you're going to concentrate on flowing faith and have that awareness this week, is, am I in flow, am I not in flow, what's working for me, what's not working for me, do I need to step back in flow if I'm really out of flow? So I hope that helps. I hope my little examples help. Next week we're going to move into the self-love stage, and we're going to talk about Independent Ivy, which I love that she's the first character of self-love, because most people go, what? Independence isn't got to do with self-love, and it's actually got everything to do with self-love. So I also have some great stories to tell you about that. So thanks for joining me live, Kylie, and anybody else who's watching the replay. I hope you got some value out of that. And I look forward to seeing you next week. If you're a footy fan, I hope you enjoy the State of Origin. I am so not, but I think it's going to be on in our house, so I will go and have a little read, I think. So thank you, happy Wednesday, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.